approximately 20 meters.
It's been featured. Okay, got it. You can record it. Feel free to record it. And let's see, can I how do I do this now? Hang on. Okay, here. It was originally published in QST February 2003. So it's been 20 years since the original article, but we've written other articles on it. It's also an Antenna Classics handbook. It's also an AWR handbook. It's in volume 8, volume 3. So it's a pretty well-known antenna, what I'm going to talk about today, and pretty well tried and true. So here's the articles. The right one was the original. So you can tell it's really old. It says you can build this for less than $10. So I can't do that anymore. It's more like $20 or $30. We also did a roll-up version of it later on. We'll go through that in a while. And then we also made this into a tri-band. There was a request of making this into a tri-band covering 2 meters and 220 and 440. That was in 2017. Mainly it was from FEMA. They said, we love your antenna. It works great, but could you add 220? Because they use 220 a lot for packet because it doesn't interfere with the other bands. So you see my daughter here, YCARS, and she's an engineer also now, the bachelor's and master's in mechanical engineering, and then she did a master's in electrical and it's okay. She didn't finish her PhD. That's why she has the electrical. That was her minor. And last year she left. She said, I don't know if I can do another 3 years of this. I said, fine with me. I don't care what you do. You're fine. So that was our tri-band. And I also give a talk on the tri-band. How do we make this into a tri-band, meeting all the requirements of FEMA? There's no radials. It's DC shorted, so no lightning arresters needed. And it's only 5 feet tall. I think this prototype is a little taller, but it's still overall, it's a little bit taller than her. About here. The original prototype was a little taller, but it's actually like that now. And we also had to patent some of these. The antenna I'm going to talk about today is not patented. I just didn't think of it. We usually patent things at the university, but we had to now patent the tri-band, and we also patented the collinear. Only reason is because people started copying that dual band one I had. And mainly I did it for the ham community. Clubs wanted to build it. That's fine with me. I'll give you all the hints. But no, what happened was people started building it and started selling them on eBay, and then started selling them on eBay saying it's the Ed Fong antenna, which is fine. I guess it is the Ed Fong antenna. It says, from QST, buy it from us. And I'm looking at, and I didn't know about this. My students came, hey, Ed, did you know they're selling your antenna? I go, oh, yeah. And that, it's kind of flattering that someone's copying it, but what was really bad, when we talked to the intellectual property attorneys at the university, like Mike Kaufman, really good guy, we started buying them. We bought a few. There's like 3 people that were making our antenna dual band. None of them worked right. They didn't understand exactly how it worked. They just took the dimensions and they're selling it. And that kind of gave me a bad reputation. People buy it at Fong antenna, not made by me. And it's got resonating at 149 megahertz and 462 and way off because of the materials. So I'll go over a little bit of it today. What's really important, how do you make the antenna correctly? So that's after that, we started patenting things so that at least that we could tell people, no. I mean, we have distributors that distribute our antenna fine, but we know it's our antenna and it works. And it comes with our name on it and it works. That's okay. But when it comes with your name and it doesn't work, then that's never good. So we had to put a stop to it. And Mike Kaufman, this guy right here, he did the trick. He knows what he's doing. He's retired now, but a really good attorney. You got to, when you consider patents, you don't initially patent things because it runs you about $5,000, and you have to make sure that is the revenue you're going to produce with this product in the patent, it's got to exceed $5,000, otherwise it's not worth it. Unless you're independently wealthy. But now, yeah, you got to just pay it. Protect yourself. So why a J-pole? When I want to make a dual band antenna, J-poles now are very, very popular. You shouldn't, in 2023, you should not be using that VHF, UHF, a ground plane type antenna or a dipole based antenna, which was the standard 20 or 30 years ago. I'll tell you why. It's not DC grounded. A J-pole is DC grounded. It's a short at the bottom. I'll show you this. So when you put an ohm meter against it, it reads 0 ohms. Now, it's 50 ohms impedance at VHF and UHF, but typically it's a 0 ohm antenna. So it grounds itself to the shield, which means it can never hold charge. It doesn't hold charge. A regular antenna, like a dipole, can hold charge because it's an open circuit. So if you have a lightning storm, 10 miles away or even a mile away, it can easily induce 30, 40 volts. And when it induces 30, 40 volts, because you burn out your front end. Because it's not a DC shorted antenna. A J-pole is. That's a real advantage, that it cannot hold charge. It does not hold charge for very long. Another terminology I don't like is lightning arrestor. People say, do you need a lightning arrestor? Because I want to, what do you want, arrest lightning? Well, I says, a lightning arrestor does not arrest lightning. I'm sure most of you know that, right? If Ben Franklin knew how to arrest lightning, he would have been a multimillionaire. To stop lightning, it's not stop lightning. Nothing stops lightning. We're not even sure an act of God can stop lightning. What a lightning arrestor does, it really doesn't stop lightning. It's if in a direct strike, your house blows up anyway. What it does is you got storms all over the place. 1 mile away, 20 miles, even 30 miles away. There are millions of volts when that thing strikes. Boom, millions of volts. All you have to do is induce 30, 40 volts. That's about all your radio can hold. You usually have some protection diodes or a MOSFET. Beyond that, you'll burn out the FET. So that's what it protects. It discharges. It's usually like a gas tube, and it discharges it. But in a J-pole, it's a DC short. It cannot hold charge, which is great. You don't need a lightning arrestor. Okay, so I like that. It doesn't require ground radios, and we'll explain that in a while. And it's very close to an ideal dipole pattern. In fact, compared to a ground plane, and I used to use ground planes when I was, 50 years ago when I was in high school making VHF antennas when repeaters started coming in. Everyone was making ground planes out of SO239 connectors and all that. But, ground planes, they stick out. They have ground radios. They fall off. In fact, I had a really nice Ringo Ranger that worked really well, but it had the ground radios. 4 or 5 years later, they fall off. So, and then it's NFET. We'll get into this. See here. Here's a picture I took it's about 4 or 5 years ago. I went up to Mount Sutro, this is in San Francisco. You see all the fog rolling in. And I was curious. I took this picture. You notice there's not a single antenna there that I can see that has ground radios. Too bad I didn't have a picture of this. Same tower 30 years ago. 30 years ago, that the antennas in there would have been the standard ground plane. That's what most people were using. But because a J-pole does not require a lightning arrestor, plus no radios to break, and you climb up that tower, that's a $500 bill you get. Guys, they have insurance and everything. Climb up, they got to replace your antenna and all that. It's $400 or $500, I believe. It's quite expensive now to get someone up in a tower like this. Stand out there, and you like to risk your life. Winds blowing at 40, 50 miles an hour. So when you put up an antenna like that, you want it to be really reliable. First thing, you got to get rid of an antenna with ground radios. And they have. Look at it. There's no ground radios here. So most of these are like DC shorted designs, or I would believe J-pole. I'm not there to X-ray it, but I would believe a J-pole type configuration. It's pretty good. It's DC shorted, no lightning arrestors. So I like that. See, the old days, you would have had a center fed. I'm sure you older hams know this, a dipole. So this is just a standard VHF dipole, 2 meters. You kind of build it. We used to build these with 4 bay, and they work okay. But look at the problem with it. An average person would not go out and build this. An avid ham maybe, but an average person, no. It's pipe. You need an insulator. There's some type of Teflon insulator. You need coax at a right angle. At a right angle now, where the plus goes up here, the minus goes there, and it's a dipole. We built these. They didn't hold up very well at repeater sites because this solder is very soft. And we notice these things just fall apart after a while with winds. It eventually rocks off there. It needs to be welded, right? A good antenna like this configuration has to be welded. Solder is just way too soft. The wind will eventually work it out. And what you would like is in a dipole, the radiating element, as far away from your mask as possible because it disturbs the pattern. Well, that's not too good neither. If you're a mechanical engineer, You know, the farther you get this out, which is better from an electrical point of view, remember this is center fed. You got to feed it at 90 degrees. The farther you get this out, the torque here, the torque is tremendous there. R cross F, if you guys took physics, right? It's the distance times the gravity pulling it down. The further this goes out, which is great for RF, the more torque you put at that node. So that's why you don't see antennas like this anymore. But, I'll show you. I must have something here. Whoops. Okay. Here's a good example. I can hold this up vertically really easily, but I can't hold it up horizontally. The R cross F on this is 0 because the radius is 0. So it's only a vertical force. But as soon as I put this on the side like that, it's much harder to hold up. Much harder. It's R cross F. The force of gravity times the distance. The more distance, the more force it pulls down. So it puts tremendous stress on this node right here. And we know this over time. All radius all break off, if they're of any significant size. So in this one here, they say you got to be a good half wavelength out. This is not. So that this mass doesn't disturb it. By the time you got this half wavelength out, the force right there would be so hard, this thing wouldn't last a season. So although electrically that's a great antenna half wave, physically it doesn't implement very well. So that's a problem I've introduced to you. So this J-pole thing, I looked at it. About in the 1990s, a friend of mine, Denny Monticelli, AE6E, he's published in QST, nice guy. He said, "Hey Ed, have you?" I saw this in the mid 1990s, maybe this J-pole configuration. He started showing me this, and I said, "That's pretty cool." It's end fed against end fed, so you can hold it up from the end. So mechanically, it should last a lot longer. And he gave it to me in a ribbon J. He says, "Just try this out," and yeah, it worked better than a ground plane, and technically it does about 1.6 dB better. And I was impressed with it. So I was the guy that said, let's put this in a PVC pipe, the new PVC pipes. Remember the old stuff used to turn yellow, and no, the new stuff is really good. And it's very, very good for RF. Excellent loss tangent. In fact, I didn't know all the detailed scientific reason for why PVC SDR 200 PSI was so good. But again, apparently John Pertune, W6NBC, I just attended a seminar at Pacificon over the weekend. He's tested all this stuff. He actually explained why 200 PSI was so good. It is the second best material that he has found for RF, radome, where the antenna, where this PVC pipe can cover an antenna. You gotta have it covered, right? If you're gonna have this up in a hill, you can't have the twin lead or whatever you're using, bare copper, it'll tear apart. This protects it really, really well. And it was the second best material he tested for covering up things. And he explained it. And he says, it's because it's non-polarized plastic. Very important, non-polarized plastic. Polarized plastic is terrible. The way I chose it, I was more simplistic than that. I chose a bunch of materials and accidentally I picked this and go, the best thing to do is let's cut a piece, put it in a microwave oven. This is how I tested it. 5 minutes, if it gets hot, it's no good, right? That means it's absorbing heat. I had this stuff 5 minutes, didn't change temperature. So I would conclude that that's probably pretty good. Then what we did do is we tested RF-wise. We put it in and we had a spectrum analyzer with a signal generator, and we had it removed from the pipe and in the pipe. And it looked pretty good. I mean, it's not super scientific, but it looked really good and it didn't heat up. I figured, sure. So for the last 20 years, we've been putting in the PVC pipe, not knowing that, the reason why it works well is it's a non-polarized plastic. And the question you might ask, okay, John Pertune says, this is the second best material. What was the best material? Well, it's called Apex. Not practical. So he said, this is actually, it's not the PVC is the second lowest loss. Apex was the best, but it's flexible. It isn't hard, so it was not practical. This is the most practical material, and it's cheap, like about 30, 40 cents a foot. So super cheap. And it'll last for years. It's absolutely UV protected. We've had one out for 17 years now, the repeater side. The thing doesn't turn yellow. It doesn't crack like the old stuff. It's fine. And we sold well over 35,000 of these things to commercial and hams. So we think that it's a pretty good, solid design. Now, J-poles, you probably have seen plans for. They're around. The question is, how do you get it to work at UHF and not degrade the performance? That's tricky because, by the year 2000, we were getting a lot of the dual band HTs. Manufacturers sold dual band antennas, but they were over $100. My object, because people were asking, can you ever make a J-pole? The stuff that they were having, it was getting popular in the early 2000s, single band only. Could you make this thing dual band? And I started looking at this because people were saying, oh, my antenna kind of works. It kind of works at UHF, my 2-meter J-pole, ones they would build, but not very well. So I started looking into this. I go, well, why is it? Of course, it works. It resonates at UHF if it's 2 meters because it's an odd harmonic. Most antennas will do this. Most of the antennas we use, like a 7 megahertz 40-meter antenna, you can also use it at 15 meters, 21 megahertz. And I won't get into the explanation here in the seminar, but it's very easy to prove on the Smith chart, right? You're just going a half turn around, another half wavelength around, you're back at the same point. So any antenna you make, like 100 megahertz dipole, will also resonate at 300, 500, 700, et cetera, until the materials limit, until other factors start coming in. But they don't, it's always at the odd harmonic. So you use this thing, a 2-meter antenna at UHF, because you bought this new UHF radio back in the year 2000, but you find it doesn't perform that well. Maybe I should go buy a true dual band. Or why don't we talk to Ed, see if he can figure this out? Well, this is what I found out. Here. Well, if you do an EasyNet simulation, a lot of you guys have EasyNet. I think this is done in EasyNet. You can do this on ADS. They'll all give you the same results. In free space, a vertical dipole in free space looks like this, the figure 8 pattern, right? Well, this is the sky up here, and this is the earth, and this is sea level. That's halfway vertical. Whether it's end-fed or whether it's that other dipole I showed you hanging out, the copper pipe will disturb enough. But ideally, it will look like this in free space. And it's good to compare in free space, not to say it will work in reality this way, but it's a good comparison. Pretend it's in free space, it looks like this. So this is looking into it. So it covers 360 degrees because if you look from above, it's just like a donut. It's a round donut. That's not a bad antenna. You sit here, you talk to a guy here, fine. But if you switch that same antenna, in this case, let's say a VHF, half-wave dipole, or even a J-pole, what we're talking about, will look like this. But at UHF, the pattern, if you trust EasyNet, which I do, it looks like this. It's called the 4-leaf clover effect. That's not too good because you're trying to sit here. You're at sea level. You're standing here, you're trying to talk to your friend here, and all of a sudden you lose about, that's by the way, dB terms, it's quite a bit of dB. It's about 6 dB actually. What happens is then, what happened to all the energy at UHF? It went up to the sky. But if you look at this lobe, 75% of it is going up to the sky, and only about 25% of it's left here. That's not what you want. Your 1 watt or your 4 watt HT now looks like a 1 watt HT. It's worse than your rubber duck. That's not what you want. So I want to solve this problem. So it's interesting. Okay, you can solve the problem, but you can't use exotic parts. The goal of this is, can you convert a VHF antenna to do UHF without much trade-offs in performance? But the most critical thing, it's got to be simple, reproducible, no radios, nothing fancy. It's got to be straightforward that people can actually do and measure. That's not always simple. So no fancy inductors that you have to buy off. You can't buy inductors at UHF anyway. You can't trust capacitors. You get a little network analyzer. Try to get a 10 picofarad capacitor. That's a 10 picofarads at below 30 megahertz. You can measure one of them. Right. In fact, you can use one of these things, these nano VNAs, Try testing a capacitor. That's 10 picofarad or whatever. And you'll say, okay, under 30 megahertz, and you enter the frequency in under 30, you say, hey, let's say you buy a 10 picofarad cap, it measures 10 picofarad. But you can't keep on raising the frequency. It starts having a self-resonance. You start seeing series inductance, series resistance, and all this parasitic stuff. Starts creeping in at 70, 80, 90 megahertz. By 100, it might even hit its own resonance. And by 500, it's useless. You cannot predict what it is. So that means no fancy capacitors. You wouldn't be able to buy them anyway. Even mica capacitors, they're very unpredictable and hard to get a hold of. So certainly no inductors you would get off the shelf. And by the way, these capacitors, they go plus or minus, usually plus 10%, -5. That's a 15% error or variation. And I can't use that. I tried all types of stuff. Remember, simple, you can do it, you can measure it. And the goal is to try to get both the VHF pattern and the UHF pattern looking like that in one antenna. Is that a challenge? That was interesting how we figured this out. So the first thing you have to know is the Smith chart. And you don't have to understand all of it, but enough to understand for this talk. A Smith chart represents a full half wave around. The reason why is you don't need a full wave around. It's a sine wave, it's symmetric, right? You can figure out what goes on in one half. The other half is just symmetric. So it's a half wave, which means 180 degrees is a quarter wave. The left-hand side represents 0 ohms, and the right-hand side represents infinity. And you can see the display in these. You can get the display and scan them on these nano BNAs for $100. I look at it this way. We require textbooks. All my graduate students require. I said, you got to buy one. It's the price of a textbook, and it's a tool you will use the rest of your life. For the price, you can't beat it, I think. So, and then the middle represents 50 ohms. So, if you're in extra class, you should know this. This is on the exam. You don't have to know all the tricks of matching up, but that's all you have to know about it. If I start out with 0 ohms, a dead short, and go a quarter wave transmission line, it will read infinity. And if it's an open circuit, and I go a quarter wave, it will read close to 0 ohms. Now, some people find that hard to believe if you think in terms of DC. This is not DC, it's AC. And the way I break this lock you have on DC is I show people this. Well, let me show you a quarter wave stub. Got one. Here, it's about a 5-inch piece of coax, 4.5 or so. That's a quarter wave stub at UHF. It's just RG58, nothing fancy. I give this to a lot of my students the first RF class they take. Most of them are engineers. They know DC. They kind of know the analysis of AC. But if you're not a ham, you wouldn't know all this stuff, right? That's where my advantage was when I went to school. Boy, I was a ham. If in a class, in an RF class, if there's a bunch of other hams in there, I was in trouble because they don't know all the practical stuff I would know. If I took an RF class and I was the only ham, man, I knew I got an A in that class. Yeah, it's true. I mean, hams, you learn, if you become a ham at 12, 13 years old, you learn a lot. You go to all the ham meetings and all that. I used to love those ham meetings. Oh, learned so much. But anyway, you tell people that's an open circuit on it. I'm not shorting it. It's an open circuit coax. So what is it on this end? It's an open circuit. No, it isn't. If it's an open circuit, it's not matched, just open circuit like that, and you put a network analyzer at UHF, which is about quarter wave, 5 inches, it's going to read a short. And if I short one end, it's going to read an open. And he said, how does that work? To the non-hams again. I said, well, put it this way. The best way I can get to explain this so that people will kind of hit it and remember it. I say, if you take a piece of aluminum foil aluminum foil, is that a conductor or is that an insulator? Well, most people say that's a conductor. We'll go, at DC, it's a conductor. But at AC, in RF fields, it's a Faraday shield. It shields things. It's an insulator. It stops RF waves. That's the opposite. And then you do the opposite. How about I give you a piece of a wooden block? Wooden block. Is that an insulator or a conductor? Most people say it's an insulator. It is at DC. At DC. But at AC, it doesn't take me to convince you it's a conductor because radio waves go through buildings, go through glass. That piece of wood, it's going to block a radio wave. Radio waves conduct, or electromagnetic waves conduct right through it. So you just have to remember it's the direct opposite almost. That's hard to believe, but that's true. And that's how I can convince you. So understanding basically the Smith chart here, I spent 3 or 4 weeks in a class on this, so we're just trying to convince you of an introduction. You can design amplifiers around this, antennas, all kinds of stuff. So here's how a basic J-pole works. Basic J-pole. Normally, it would have been a half-wave antenna. This is for VHF. VHF, 37, 38 inches of half wave. You would have center fed it. This is a twin lead that you would build a J-pole out of, 3-middle twin lead. You would normally have fed it in the middle, exactly like this picture here. You would feed it in the middle. But hopefully I've convinced you, yeah, that's okay if you feed it in the middle. Electrically, it's okay, but not mechanically. Mechanically, it's a disaster nightmare. What you would like to do is feed it at the bottom, where now R cross F is equal to 0. So the problem is, if you feed it in the middle, it's 60 ohms or so, and you can feed it with coax. The problem is at the ends, it's a high impedance. It's a quarter wave away. It's not 50 ohms anymore. It's in the equivalent, if you measured it, it's in the thousands of ohms. So you got to match it somehow. So that's thousands, not 50. But you always use 50. Your radios, your mobile radios are 50. How do you match it? Well, again, you use this quarter wave stub. Quarter wave stub, remember. A short circuit, a quarter wave later is an open or a high impedance. A short circuit, a quarter wave later is a high impedance. It might not be infinity. I'm sure it's not infinity, but high. It's pretty high. In RF, thousands of ohms, several thousand ohms. So a short circuit actually turns into several thousand ohms. So a short circuit down here, by the time you go up a quarter wave, it's thousands of ohms, which will match the N of a half-wave dipole, which is also thousands of ohms. Now, what you have to ask is, wait a moment. You say this is 15.25 inch, 1.25 inch, so you add that up, 16.5. Why is it 16.5 inches and not about 18? That's because it's in the twin lead, right? It's in the twin lead. It's got a velocity factor. Easy way to explain that, right? In open space air, we use the formula: the speed of light is equal to frequency times lambda. C equals F lambda. If you use the speed of light, you put in the frequency, 146 megahertz or so. Lambda will equal to 2 meters. 2 meters. But in twin lead or any plastic or anything, you cannot use the speed of light for that formula. It's going to slow it down. In this case, maybe 5%, maybe more, about 10%. About 10%. It's in the twin lead. The speed of light in twin lead does not travel at 3 times 10 to the 8th meters a second. That's in air. In twin lead, it's about 10% less, maybe 10 to 15% less. So if you use that, C equals F lambda, the frequency stays the same, but the speed of light slows down. The lambda is going to be smaller. Right? It's about 16.5. It's shrunk about 2 inches if you put it in twin lead. But then still the principle of short circuit, a quarter wave at 2 meters, in this case, it's about 16.5 inches. There's a high impedance. It matches the high impedance of the antenna here. It's opposed to the middle. The middle is a low impedance, but it's not practical. There's no simple way of feeding this thing with some big arm. And, it's a mess. It's a mess. It doesn't last long. It doesn't hold up to wind. This does hold up to wind much, much better. And then you say, well, if that's 0 ohms, and that's, we've measured it, 2,000, 3,000 ohms, pretty high. There must be 50 ohms somewhere here. It turns out that's about 1.25 inches. We actually find that by trial and error, because 50 ohms is a lot closer to 0 than infinity. So it's more closer to down here than up here. And you'll find it with a network analyzer. You can move it around. It's about 1.25 inches. Great. Now you can put a 50 ohm coax and it goes to your radio. So that's how a standard J-pole works. And if you look at the E fields on it, it's obviously going to be 0 here. And as you go up a quarter wave, it increases like that. So I'll show you. So how do you make this into a dual band? Good. So at UHF, so at VHF, what happens is 0 ohms off, 0 field, then the E field grows. That's high impedance, that's high voltage, low current. It feeds right into here. And hang on, I think I have a photo of here. So here it is again, the E field's here, like this. Why does it match at UHF also? Well, if you map the wave at UHF, it looks like this. It's 3 times the frequency. Remember, it has to reach a high impedance point at that node. Why does it still match? Why does that 2-meter antenna still match? I didn't say work, match at UHF. That's because you start out here, it's a still short circuit. You go up about 5 inches, you're up here. You go another 5 inches, you dip back down, and you go up another 5 or 6 inches. It dips back up. You moved a half wavelength, then another quarter, and you're back at a peak. So it matches. It matches fine. Why does it not work? The reason why it doesn't work at UHF is it wants to see a half wave here, 11 to 12 inches, depending on the frequency. Oh, what happened? Uh-oh. How does this work? Oh, I hit the wrong button. I hit N. Okay, here. So what happens here at UHF? It matches, I've just shown you that, but it would like to see about 11 or 12 inches. It doesn't. It sees 37 inches or 38 in that range, depending on the frequency. So when you drive the current here, it moves up. It sees 12 inches. It should stop. Half wave, great. But the currents continue. You didn't break it. It continues. So when it continues, it's going to push that wave up. So the best way of explaining this, that's why you get these clover. The current continued and it starts building up that. And it robs it from where you want it. So what you want to do is you do this. You put a little quarter wave stub at UHF. 4.25, 4.5, depending. RG174, it's got a higher velocity factor. So it's not 6 inches, it's about 4.25, because the speed of light in RG174 is about 0.8. It loses about 20% compared to the speed of light. So obviously you shorten it accordingly. That's about 4.25, 4.5 inches. Short circuit, infinity. So only at UHF does it see infinity. So you've made a trap, not out of L's and C's, because I tell you, L's and C's are very inconsistent at VHF, UHF. You've done it with coax. Yes, you can do it with coax. So at UHF it stops, but it's not resonant at VHF. At VHF, it goes right through. Therefore, you have a VHF and UHF antenna. That's the trick, or the main the main topic I'm trying to get across here. Well, you'll see other J poles, copper J. This is an interesting one. I have models of it. I have my students actually build these just to show how these things work. We actually build this one in class to show that what the limitations are. What we find is this one works pretty well for VHF. It does not work for UHF very well because several things we found. So you have one of these. These are really popular. Problem is, you wouldn't be able to say that copper pipe is so expensive, like 40, 50 bucks now, just in the copper. And these fittings cost you a fortune. I wouldn't recommend just based on cost. But it works okay at VHF. But at UHF, we find that this transmission line is not valid anymore. It's too wide, right? At UHF, you're only talking about 5 or 6 inches for a quarter wave. And this is just too wide. By the time the UHF signal propagates down here, it's not a very good match. So you lose a lot. And then the other thing at UHF is to jump across, or you're tapping it. Well, a quarter wave is only 5 or 6 inches. You can't go jumping, you know, almost 2 inches. You lose a third of your power, just starts radiating at that point. Surprisingly, at VHF, it radiates a little bit, but not so bad that you notice a big difference. So it actually works for VHF. or UHF, I wouldn't recommend it. If you want to go build one, you can go build one. Pretty expensive these days, $40, $50, just in the copper. These fittings cost money. These things are not cheap anymore. I mean, I used to pick up that thing for 30, 40 cents. All of a sudden, this thing goes up a little under $2 now, just for that fitting. So it really, really builds up pretty quick. And copper is just expensive. So VHF is okay. If you want to build it, that's fine. The other attempt I saw, it was Arrow trying to do a dual band. They had a clever configuration where they kind of jimmy in this extra UHF stub. See, here's the UHF portion and here's the VHF portion. So they have an extra resonator in there. And again, I look at these, and I didn't build one, but we did buy one. That was, you know, $60. And, you know, I've got one right here. It's bought. We didn't build this. I bought it. I wanted to test it out. Here it is. Yeah, it's not clever. I thought it was pretty clever. So what happens here is at UHF, you feed it in here. The elements are here. And then at UHF, the drive element's here, and then the long one. So that's the J portion at VHF and the J portion at UHF. Oh, here goes my phone. Probably garbage. Hang on. Hello? Garbage. Okay. We get a lot of these calls. What I found was this. At see, because this VHF part, it still matches at UHF. It's the third harmonic. And at UHF, of course, this also matches. So what I found was about half the power was going into here at UHF. So at VHF, this thing works fine because this doesn't resonate at UHF. So VHF, this is the antenna, it works fine. At UHF, half the power is going into here and half the power is going into there. So it kind of works. But still, the 50% of the power going into there, 75% of it's going into the air. So it is an improvement, but not a total solution. Nice attempt. And that's nicely built antenna, milled, machine milled and everything. No radial, so it's just hold up. And then I also want to cover the Slim Jim here. If you guys ever hear of the Slim Jim, it does not work at UHF very well. It's basically a standard, you know, tying the top. I guess that's the definition of Slim Jim. We didn't see any difference, and you don't simulate any difference, so it's considered a single band antenna. So back to what we did. So you have this decoupling stub. So at UHF, and the matching wasn't the problem. It goes up, it sees 11 to 12 inches, boom, half wave, and it sees a high impedance point. Probably not infinity, but not bad. You know, when we measure it, it's actually quite good. When we actually measure when we simulate it, it looks great. When we actually measure it, and people have bought this and go, yeah, it's pretty good. The principle is clearly much, 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 much better than if you didn't have the stub at UHF. And at VHF, I'll show you the results here. Oh, hang on, before I go to this. We make a roll-up version of it too. One of my students says, can't you make this all in one twin lead? Yeah, well, you could. So you can roll the whole thing up as a portable emergency antenna. It takes some tricky cuts to make sure the thing holds together and put some heat shrinkable tubing. But you know, the most interesting thing is this. Here's the roll-up. Here's the one you go in the PVC pipe. There's about a 2-inch difference in dimensions. This is longer because this operates in air. It doesn't go into a PVC pipe. When all these calculations are done here, when you use the antenna form, the C equals F lambda, you do use 3 times 10 to the 8th meters a second because it operates in air. When you do the base where this goes into a PVC pipe, then you've got to use about 0.9 the speed of light. So when you compare the two antennas, this is about 2 inches longer for the roll-up, but it works. That's the only thing. And also, when you purchase the one that goes in the PVC pipe, which is our base station, we calibrate to Lowell's item 23990, the PVC pipe. Again, because you get by different PVC pipes, they have different velocity factors. And we find that the Lowell's one is relatively available. Most people have Lowell's around, their local town. And they all carry this 23990. Pretty inexpensive, 30, 40 cents a foot. So that's what, but you just can't go, for example, some people try using the gray gas one. It won't work. The red, there's some metallic elements in it or something. I don't know what it is, but it won't work. But 23990, you have to use it with that. Of course, the roll-up just operates in air. But let's look at some of the results. This is using the base station. It does work. Here is the 2-meter J-pole at UHF, a standard one. It reads about, this is on a Keysight spectrum analyzer, about here just as a reference. And sure enough, when we use our antenna, it gets back about 6 dB. That's a lot. 6 dB is 4x. And this is a 10 dB log scale. That's why it's not as noticeable. But that's 6 dBs right there. It works. In fact, one of my students just quantified it. He took, his thesis was on measuring antennas for true performance. In other words, how do you actually measure the gain of an antenna, which I'm sure manufacturers don't do. A lot of them don't do because we never get these results. If you're going to do it scientifically, like for NASA, for the government, you really have to take about a minimum of 15 measurements. Rainy day, 5 in a rainy day, 5 in a foggy day, and 5 in a clear day, and then take the averages because things change. So we did this. Here's the results. And it's pretty much pretty close to what you would simulate. If it's a reference quarter wave mobile antenna, minus 24.7 dB, and all, nothing fancy. It was in a parking lot on a Sunday. The parking lot's fairly empty. We have a spectrum analyzer. We have a signal generator using our antennas. So some reference point of 27.7 dB, 15 measurements. That's why it's 0.7. You average all the numbers. You substitute a rubber duck. It's exactly what you would sort of predict, about 6 dB difference. So rubber duck loses about 6 dB over a quarter wave antenna. A VHF J pole will gain a little bit more, about 1.5 dB more. So J pole, but a J pole is taller. You have to remember, this is a quarter wave mobile. So it's only 19 inches with the ground plane of the car. A J pole would be 3 times the height, but no radius. And VHF, it's about little less than 5 feet tall. Yeah, in fact, yeah, it's going to be 18 times 3, whatever that's 36, about 56, not quite 5 feet, about 6 inches below 5 feet. So it is not 19 inches, but it stands vertically. It tolerates wind pretty low, pretty well. And I think people have determined that's a better configuration. You can't do this at HF because it'll be 3 times longer. But at VHF, UHF, both sizes are tolerable. So VHF and our dual band, and I'm pretty confident in these measurements, you do lose about 0.1 dB. I'm pretty confident. It's not conditions. You really do lose 0.1. This is 15 measurements on average. Because that little stub there, it does lose a little bit. Not significant, but it definitely loses a little bit. I don't think you guys would ever notice it because we've got pretty good measurement equipment. Now, how about at UHF? At UHF, you notice propagation, same situation between VHF and UHF. It's almost like more than 10 dB down under the same situation. But it's a UHF signal as opposed to a VHF signal. So you guys probably notice this, right? Propagation on UHF and distances. If you have a repeater side with both VHF and UHF, you get better coverage at VHF. You do. Mathematically, you do. The propagation. Anyway, reference minus 38.8 dB. Rubber duck, only about 3 dB loss. A rubber duck in a handy talk is not bad because it isn't shrunk down from 18 inches to 6 inches like in VHF. A rubber duck is typically a quarter wave is 5, 6 inches, and a rubber duck's about that. So it doesn't lose much except for the ground plane. So a UHF or rubber duck proportionally works better than a rubber duck at VHF, and that agrees with what the simulations would say. Now use a standard J pole. Oh yeah, we actually measure. It's terrible. The reference at UHF was minus 38.8 dB. You do a scientific measurement, measured 50 yards in a clear field. Oh yeah, it does lose about 6 dB. That's a lot. The trick is, how does our J pole work? When you put that little decoupling stuff, it almost all comes back. The average person, they will not know the difference between that and a true standard half-wave J pole. 38.8, it almost all comes back instead of the minus 41, or actually minus 45, minus 38.9. It almost all comes back. Not all, but almost, and that's pretty good. You can't get, you always lose a little bit. So yeah, it works. It's a simple principle, and you play around with it, it does work. So here's our lab. Here's our original lab in 2008 when we did this. This is our new network analyzer. We're using our Keysight one. And yeah, all about the same measurements. Here's a nano. I love that nano. Small, portable. Doesn't do as much as what this would do, but good enough. I mean, for most things, it's good enough. Trust me, it's good enough. For $100, you can't beat it. Oh, so here's some Smith chart measurements. People say, well, that stub at 445, we sweep it. Yeah, it's not infinity. It would have been here, right? But it isn't, but it's right about there or so, right there. It's pretty high. It's not 50 ohms and it's not 0, but it's pretty high. So it's not perfect. So that's where probably the 0.1 dB is coming from. You put it on a network analyzer. And it's pretty stable. I mean, the stub itself, here's the stub, here's the stub itself. If you put your hands around it and everything, where it doesn't resonate, yeah, it does weird things, but well, it's pretty stable up there, way up there, a few thousand ohms at 445. So it's not perfect, but it's quite reliable, I think. The stub at 146 megahertz looks like an open circuit, so not perfect, but pretty close to it. And a piece of wire looks like that. And I think we flipped this somehow, but it doesn't matter. That's an open circuit wire, that stub. It looks like that, and that's a wire, and that's a stub. And it's pretty high. I mean, it shouldn't make that much difference at VHF. In other words, inserting it, maybe 0.1 dB. It's not major. So here's how it looks, right? Hanging up again. The force is all at the bottom. No R cross F. The R is 0. So it holds up much better. No radials. It's all round. So sure, a quarter wave ground plane would have been like this tall with radials. That's true. Here it is taller. But the vertical force is very small, and these have just held up much better than a ground plane. Here's a roll-up. We offer a roll-up. It's a kit. You don't build it. I'm saying this is the antenna. We offer a 6-foot RF extension because if you're in a few, you want to extend it. It's custom made with male BNC, female, so you can just extend them like an extension cord. We include the adapters for it's BNC, so it's BNC to SMA and then also SMA reverse with the Baofengs. One of my students suggested this. We built this years ago, and it's pretty popular, right? For emergency communications, for camping, backpacking. It's pretty ideal. Let's see. Okay, so if you like this talk, we give a talk on how you make a collinear out of a J-pole. In other words, how you get gain. It's about 3-4 dB of gain. It's not so simple where you can just short something like a Slim Jim. Now, to get real gain, you need to phase two pieces. And we also do a tri-band I talked about earlier. It covers 220. How you get these interesting resonating coils going and still get the other two bands. So, and here's something. We don't offer these. I just think that I'm like a prize chairman for a couple of clubs. We've been giving these out. I don't know if you guys tried some of these Chinese radios. They actually work pretty well at, really reasonable prices. I know this one, Radio Oddity, $100. It's a quad band, 2 meters, 220, 440. It also covers 350, which is not a ham band in the US. BTEC puts out I think it's the same radio, just different firmware. They charge a little bit more, 128. They even, BTEC, they reviewed this in QST. They even make a tri-band UV5R. It covers 220. Yeah, I think you can buy it. Look around, $40. This is a little high, this is a long time. You can buy it for like $40. And I tell you, another radio I'm really excited about. Again, I had nothing to do with this, but I know some of the guys that worked on this, the Northern California QRP Club. Have any of you guys heard of this radio, the USDX? Man, John, do you have one?
I don't have one, but I've heard of it, and
I tell you,
nothing but rave reviews.
I mean, it's no Ellicraft, but it's only $155.
No.
One of the club members, agent said, "Have you heard of this?" I go, "Yeah, I've heard of it." He said, "Why don't we go buy one?" I mean, it's $155. I bought one. Hey, that's amazing. That is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, they're
does
getting
all
some good press
bands.
right now.
The battery lasts forever. The most innovative thing is what's called a Class S amplifier. It's a switching RF amplifier. Here, I'll show you a picture of it. That's the RF amplifier. No heat sink switching. So how do they achieve single sideband with it? I downloaded the PhD dissertation. That is amazing. It's sigma delta modulated. So I can give a talk on this because I was so amazed when I took this thing apart and started reading up all the efforts. I had nothing to do with building it. All I say is I operated like the California QSO party. I went up the hills here. It's got a built-in 4 ampere-hour lithium battery you buy it with. It'll go all weekend. Wow. The battery problem goes away. It's so efficient. I mean, this puts out 5 watts, no heat sink, it's switcher. It's about 80% efficient on the higher bands. The lower bands, it's about 90. At 10 meters, it's still 80% efficient. It's amazing. I mean, these guys, the guys that did this, put in a lot of effort over the years. But really, some Dan Talo and Wes Hayward. These guys are sharp guys, man. And then this Manny guy from Germany, and then they took the RF amplifier. I mean, I am just blown away that you can build a radio. It's got built-in CW decoding, a built-in keyer, of course. Comes with a little mic. The battery life is amazing how they do this. And all I caution is it's a cool radio. There's different versions of it made. Buy it with the battery because we bought one without the battery because if you buy it from China, they can't ship the lithium ion battery with it. You cannot find that battery anywhere. I mean, you can substitute some 18350s in here, but then you kind of glue it on there. Buy it with that battery. That battery is amazing. It's a square one that's 4 ampere-hour. It will last all weekend. Your battery problems are gone for a backpacking or camping trip. But yeah, I'm pretty impressed. It's got the CW decoding, a built-in keyer on it. What else? Of course, it does FT8 and all the digital modes. But I bring it up to the little lake here, and during contests like CQ Worldwide, I make contacts all over the place. Or California QSO. I was working Alberta, Canada, and I brought a friend with me from the club. I said, you guys probably don't believe this. I show you my log. You probably, these are false. Like, okay, one of you guys, you got to come up with me. I'll buy you lunch. You come on up. 2 hours, we worked about 56 contacts. Wow. And then he had to go in the club meeting and says, Ron, stand up. Were you there? He goes, yes. Did we make all those contacts? And I said, yeah, we did. And it was virtually everyone we heard we can talk to. He goes, yes. And Ron says, that's because of your good antenna. The antenna you got to use on these things. Don't use wire tuners and all this stuff. You need a good resonant dipole high up over water. That's your linear amplifier, your water. That's the trick. Anyway, hey, I'm open to questions, by the way. So I'm going to send John a spreadsheet. If you guys want to order these antennas I've talked about, you guys get it for $35. I'll send you a spreadsheet. The roll-up also for $35. The tri-band I didn't talk about, you get for $65. Now, these retail online. I've got distributors that distribute. They're $55 each and $90. So you get quite a discount only if you order through the club. We also make a GMRS, that gain antenna I was talking about, retails for $60. You get it for $43. So it's quite a savings. I'll send John the spreadsheet. Take your time with it. This is how I raise funds for my RF wireless group, which is a really good group. I've got a class tonight for them. But yeah, this radio, I tell you, if you guys get it before you order, email me, because Ron, KI6AZB knows the right vendor. You've got to make sure the vendor has the battery and the adapter, right? Because apparently you got to buy it here, because if you buy from China, they can't send the battery with it. And boy, you cannot find that battery. It's worth paying extra $20. So if you guys are interested, call me. I don't have them in stock or anything, but I know Ron knows all the vendors, KI6AZB, and he'll be more than glad to order it for you guys. But it is, I got to admit, it's amazing. And then, by the way, the antenna I use is the one called QRP kits. It's a 40-meter, 20-meter trap dipole, super light, $25, $25, $150, under $200. You go backpacking, set up an antenna. It is lots of fun. It is lots of fun. Anyway, how about some questions?
Yeah, we just had one of our club members, Jason K4HEF. He's on chat, and he said he has your roll-up J-pole. Absolutely loves it. So.
Okay. Oh, good.
All right. Anybody?
So, John, who do you know that has one of these USDX radios?
I've seen him on YouTube on a couple of the YouTubers channels. They're talking about a Raven on it. I haven't played with one myself, but I keep thinking that it might be time to get. Well, I have a Mac HF, which is the um, English SDR radio that came out probably, I don't know, 7 years ago, and I really like it. And it's a little QRP rig, but I may buy one of these as a toy.
How much did that radio cost? The other one you're talking about?
It was two something. It was a kit.
Oh, cheap too. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, because what these uses, they use an Atmel microcontroller FPGA, right?
Yeah.
The heart of it is on a chip. It's got the CW decoder, a keyer. Oh, it's got all the filters, by the way. All the filters from 4 kilohertz down to 100 hertz for CW. It's all digital in a digital domain. It's cheap.
Yeah. Well, I just got another one of the couple of the guys here on chat echo the positive comments. It's Theo K4TTM. He has 3 of your antennas. They completely rock. And then Bill McMillan, KO4NZA, said the J-pole and the 5-foot PVC on top of the Harbor Freight telephoning flagpole, it just works.
Yeah, sure. Oh, sure. Yeah. So yeah, I'll send you a spreadsheet. You guys get it at the dealer cost, which is about 20% off.
Well, that's very kind of you.
Yeah, that's fine. So
do we have any,
I'll take questions. 10 minutes. Questions. Throw me questions.
Yeah, just go ahead and unmute and throw your question out. I'm curious, with your collinears, how are you attaching that to get the extra gain?
Oh, it's a 2-element phase collinear.
Okay.
It's right here. In the talk I would explain.
Oh, I didn't see the screen. I was watching you in the video.
Yes, it's
okay.
It's a phase, and I'll explain that if you want to hear the talk. So we make that in UHF, ham, or GMRS, of course.
Okay.
It gives about 4 or 5 dB of gain. Not very tall. It's I think only 37 inches tall. Because luckily, at UHF you can pack a lot of stuff, right?
Right.
You couldn't do this at HF; it'll be too big. But at UHF, so UHF, a quarter wave is only 5 or 6 inches. Well, you can spare for a base a little taller. Well, you might as well take advantage of that and get some gain.
Yeah, why not?
And I explained this in talk.
We'll definitely have you back, because our club just is hungry for antenna projects. I've done a couple of things on phase vertical arrays, and we've had Callum McCormick from DX Commander in. So we've had a bunch of folks talking about antennas, and that's one of the things our club loves to do. Any other questions for Dr. Fong?
Yeah, just got about 5 more minutes, and I got to start packing up.
Hey, Dr. Wong, this is Jason, K4HEF. Sure. I was wondering, I have both the Nano VNA, but I just switched to the Tiny SA, and I realized I don't have to calibrate it nearly as often.
You don't. No, the Tiny SA is calibrated. The other one, the Tiny SA. Have you seen the new 4-inch one they have?
Yeah, I think they came out with that right after I bought this one.
Yeah, it's a little bit more expensive, about $150.
Right.
A little easier to use, but that tiny one's great pocket size, and it comes calibrated.
Yeah, it's great, and it's a little bit more robust, I feel. But I have one of the early Nano VNAs that it's not the full case, and so it feels kind of flimsy.
Yeah.
So yeah, all right. Well, they've
improved on it, right? Obviously, they've improved on it with the 4-inch one. It's in a nice case, and But the reason why you have to calibrate a network analyzer is because you have to consider the coax length.
Yep.
If you're going to measure the S parameters, you got to calibrate out the coax.
Oh, that makes sense.
That's why you in a spectrum analyzer, you don't have that situation. You're just looking at a signal. You're not trying to measure the impedance. You're just trying to measure the length, the strength of the signal.
Gotcha. Well, thank you.
That's why you don't need calibration in a spectrum analyzer.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, you can throw all kinds of questions at me. I would try to answer them. It's going to be Nano VNA, how they do it, the spectrum analyzers, the antennas.
Everybody's been kind of shy. I do a lot with OTDRs in my business life, so I'm very familiar with the optical time domain reflectometers. But
hey, so did you see the new version of this? It's taking a frequency domain, but remember, the TDR is just an FFT.
Right.
They calculate the FFT, so it looks like you took a TDR. Have you seen the new version of this?
No, I haven't seen that. No.
Well, if you buy one now, you can't buy the old version. Someone wrote the software, FFTing it, and it looks like you took a TDR measurement.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to check that out.
It is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Hey, $100?
Yeah,
It's
probably.
amazing what you can do with these instruments, compared to 30, 40 years ago. Hey, we were buying these network analyzers. These things were, I'll tell you, this top one, this was bought 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
This is a picture taken in 2008, but we bought this about 2003. That was $80,000 back then.
Yeah.
That was $2002 and was $80,000. And then this one here we bought in 2021, 2 years ago, and it virtually does the same thing. And in 2021 dollars, it actually went down in price. Absolutely, it was about 48,000.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So not even including inflation, this thing went way down in price.
Yep.
Then so I open this up. See, when you open this up, it's a full analyzer, dedicated PC boards and everything. That's why it's so big. You open up this one. It's a PC. It's a PC board right there. And then the instrument actually is this panel. It kind of unfolds. All the super duper expensive RF oscillators are all within this panel that kind of comes off.
Oh,
And
wow.
then it's got these cables going to the PC, and it's got a hard drive in there. I mean, this thing comes up in Windows Pro, by the way.
Yeah.
This thing comes up, you've probably seen these Windows, and then you hit an icon saying, this is called 5062 key site. Then all the bright patterns come. Otherwise, you run it as a PC.
Yeah, we've got some testers actually run on the Google Android processors.
Yeah, it really, so they really take advantage of the memory, the processing power of a PC, and then ride on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, one last question. Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I got to go. But
everybody seems to be pretty quiet. Oh, here comes Brian. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah.
I was just curious, Dr. Farr, if you have anything new coming up, or anything you're working on right now?
New coming up. I've got stuff, but I'm not so sure. We're so busy doing these antennas. I had this one I was thinking about doing in QST of how you make our antenna also HF. So I've done this, but I'm not so sure it's worth an article. So what it is, let me tell you. Let's see. I guess, it's, well, let me show you. I've done it myself. It works great. Let me show you. Can I? Oh, okay. Hang on. No, I don't have it here. What it is it looks like a little ballon that you hook at the end of the antenna. And so it's got a PL259 with an SO239, but it's about this long. And we put two holes on the side with two banana plugs. And what we found is, let's say you're camping and you don't have that much space. You want all the antenna all in one. What we found is, so you have your regular antenna here, a DBJ1 or whatever, and it's got two little banana plugs here that you can, as long as it's symmetric, you make a dipole, HF dipole, and as long as it's symmetric, we found it doesn't affect the VHF, UHF too much. So I don't know whether I played around. It works pretty cool. So it looks like a little tube that's got, again, I can't find it here, but it's got a PL259 on one end. So it screws into your DBJ1 and it comes out like this, but it's got two little banana plugs here that you can just hook up a dipole and any band you want. But the key was, you got to make it symmetric. If it's not, it does screw up the SWR a little bit. But if you make it symmetric, then you get HF on the same coax.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Yeah, so you guys can make this. You just drill two holes on the side and put two banana plugs or whatever you want to clip onto. You just clip the dipole on it. And as long as it's symmetric, it doesn't affect the currents too much. So that's pretty cool, right? If you're portable, if you want to have VHF, UHF, and HF off kind of the same kit.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. It might be like hints and kinks in QST that you can do that. And the concept is pretty simple.
Absolutely. Brilliant.
But it's pretty cool. Then this way you bring this along with this little tube thing, then you can kind of parallel HF with it. And you bring along this USDX radio on there.
Put a link dipole on it and you'd be good to go for a couple bands.
Yeah. I don't know. Again, I usually bring, I use a QRP kits dipole, $25. It's got its own wire and all that stuff that works fine.
Makes sense.
Okay, any more questions?
Anybody else? Okay. Well, Dr. Fong, thank you so very
Yeah,
much.
you're very welcome.
This was absolutely wonderful. We'd love to have you back.
Yeah,
to do
schedule me
something
in next year.
maybe next year. Yep.
Yep, we could do collinear, tri-band.
I
What
vote
else?
for collinear.
I even do that. I have a little talk now on that USDX radio. I have nothing to do with it, but
Yeah.
the club, my club wants it. Can you explain that, how this thing works? So I have a little 1 hour talking on what they did on the chip, which is an Atmel FPGA chip, and basically the philosophy of how do you get this radio for $155. It does all band,
Crazy.
CW decode, right? Oh, I mean, hey, if I was growing up, I used to look at Heathkit stuff, you know, $300-400 in $1970. Now it's half that, and this rig does twice as much as an old Heathkit HW 101 or an SB 101.
Amazing.
So I'm pretty impressed. Like I said, I got nothing to do with this. I just try to analyze and say, wow,
Yeah.
these guys are, you know, like my friend Ron says, hey, Ed, you know, he teaches at Stanford. He goes, you know, there are a lot of sharp people in the world. You kind of worry about, you know, our group fades, and then other people come on. There's just a lot of, you know, there's 6-8 billion people in this world. There's going to be a few sharp guys out there that innovate like crazy. And it's always fun to see, you know, I'm maybe beyond the age of innovation. I can answer questions, but innovation, these young kids, oh, it's amazing what they do. So anyway,
Well, again,
I will
thank
close
you
it out
so
if there's no more questions.
No, we
No more
appreciate
questions?
you being here. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm going to stop sharing, and I got to run off to school. Okay. We'll see you
All
guys
right,
later.
have a good
Take
night
care.
at school.
Yeah, just schedule me in for next year or something.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay,
so
sure.
much.
Take care. Hey, thanks a lot, guys. Take
Bye.
care. 73s.